And I'm welcoming Mr. Wei Wu. Wei Wu is a doctor, is a research assistant at the University of Oxford. He has been doing research in the area of financial inclusion and innovation in the past 9 years. He was working for the FinTech firm in Beijing before he started his PhD in the University of Birmingham in 2012. Welcome!
Thank you very much. Can I see my PowerPoint? Is that?
Yep.
Thank you. No, this is not my presentation, sorry. I'm talking about financial technology and digital inclusion today. And if you can see my presentation, you will find there's a little bit modifications on the title. I'll explain why. And if there are any housekeeping issues, I would say I'm not representing University of Oxford today because my boss is not permitted to do that. He looks like the agenda and asked me, what's this conference about? Is this anything to do with our research? I said, maybe yes, I'm introducing what we're doing research about. And he said, I do not recognize these speakers. They are not in my network, so perhaps you can go there if you need to at the Traveler. I said, okay, that's okay, I accept it. And I just did it. So I'd really be jealous of those guys who can introduce their research with your title. Okay, so I think I'd better start now before we are fed up with the waiting time. I changed my topic from the financial technology and digital inclusion into the same one, but with the subtitle called A Libertarian Perspective. The reason is very simple. When people look at my title, they are very confused because there are two reasons. First, I'm discussing four things here. Now, most of the speakers are talking about just one thing, either regulation or entrepreneurship or innovation. And I'm talking about four things like technology, finance, innovation, digital. It's very confusing for many of us. So I just put a libertarian over there, just stressing that I'm one of you. And that's very important because when there's someone who doesn't recognize me as I'm the first time speaking at the Libertarian Conference, they are very confused. Like you're not addressing some topics that we are addressing today. So maybe you are very suspicious. Are you a Mongolian police or a Chinese spy? So to be very transparent, I'm not neither of them. And I put the libertarian thoughts as a label so that you can trust me as a speaker. So that's just two only reasons that I changed the title a little bit. And I think I minimized the very professional research terms into these slides because I hope I can let you know why I'm doing this research. What I'm trying to do is determined by my growth journey. So in this presentation, in the last 15 minutes, I will introduce how I grew up as a little libertarian and how did I choose my research topic and what changes I would like to make in the future. So there are some pictures over there which I can show you once the transformation is done. But I think I will start with my growth journey from the college life. I did my undergraduate in a Chinese university, and my major is economics with a minor in international trade. And I think that's very useful journey because that helps me to understand what is economics and what should I learn in the rest of my life. But another thing which is very meaningful to me is that I met very interesting people over there. I went to a college in China with majority of students from very poor background. As a spoiled child grew up in the city, I never met those people in the early part of my life. And I was really surprised. It is not because we're not sharing the same language or we're not studying the different things, but the background of families just treated us so differently. I still remember that in a room of 6 that we were being allocated in the same residence, that we have to live together and study together, that I'm the only person who's not been regarded as a poor people. and the arrests are regarded by the standard of very poor. So I remember that some people have to work very hard and get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to work on the street and to pick up the trash and litters on the street to collect the plastic buttons so they can sell them and get some money as their tuition fees. The tuition fee is not very expensive. It's only maybe $500 per year, but they're struggling to pay that tuition, and they're very insistent to doing the work. So I was really surprised that my colleagues have to work so hard to live a life that I'm living as a granted. So I think that makes me very nervous. What should I do to understand those people, and what should I do to understand poverty and to help those poor students around me, particularly as a student in the economic studies. So I think I spent most of the time in my college life learning these things and learning myself as a citizen over there. I think, great, here we go. I think I learned several things, and here I'm going to show you. Can I play this now? Yeah. So this is the title. This is my journey. I'll skip this because I just introduced a little bit. But in this page, it's interesting. You see I'm traveling around different places. So from this point of view, you can have a guessing on what's the degree of confidence that I could be a spy or police when traveling around the globe. So this is a picture I'm trying to show you where I grew up as a college student. It looks not a terrible place, green lakes, tall buildings, weather is nice. But look at the dormitory, the student residence. It's like 2 floors and you have to sleep at the same place. And it's okay, but imagine in such small spaces, 6 people have to sleep together and without sharing lavatory. So that's not a very typical healthy life. But within these spaces, I learned a lot. And those is not the person I knew, but they are living a very similar lifestyle. They're picking up the plastic bottles on the street to make their livings. So I'm living with 5 of them in my college life. So these are the questions that are being asked in the first year or the terms. I think that can help you to understand how poor they are. For example, what animals do I raise? What plants do I grow? For many of you may think of this like an English garden life. You got an apartment, you got a house, and you grow things at the backyard gardens. But it is not. In the context I'm talking about, this is the income that the students or their families can get and support their studies. And the third question is interesting. How many sisters or brothers do you have? It's not referring to that, are you the only child in your family? This is about, are they sacrifice their futures for support you to do this job in your college? Because so many of them, they've got 1 sister, 1 brother, whatever, and they could be very good and excellent in their degree, but only 1 can be in the college because the family cannot support 2 or one of them. So the rest of the children have to sacrifice and support the only one who's become regarded the most potential in their studies. And I was surprised to learn that. And also, what's the amount of your loan? It's an interesting question as well, because many of them are living regarded the loan, and they have to get 26 stamps from local authorities to get the loan, and the other from the banks or village courts or whatsoever. And I can't imagine if I go to 26 different places to get the loan, like $500 to leave my studies. It's just ridiculous. And the last one, would you like to work in the city? For me, it's a very simple question. I never thought that I would find a job in the rural areas in China or somewhere else. And living in the city seems to me the only way that I can continue, or if I would like to find a job after finishing my degree. But for them, it's their family's wish that this only child can find a job in the city and get rid of the field work in the rural area and change their lives forever. So I was surprised by asking these questions. And the last one, I think, is quite an interesting one. Are you the guy who took the airplane here? because in that cohort of 3,000 people, I'm the only person who took the flight to the college, and everybody knows me before they meet me. So I became very famous, and I didn't know that until they asked me the question. So they regarded me as a very celebrity who can afford the tickets. And those questions, I think, are very genuine to reflect how poor they are and how they're struggling to rebuild their futures through the studies. And that's been very surprising to me. And I think I asked myself 3 questions in my college life. What is poverty? Why people are poorer than the others? How can I help them? I think some of the issues are addressed by Lee this morning, that how libertarian can save the poor people and how poor people are suffering. I think my growth can be supplementary to that. From what I learned in the textbook, it's very different to the libertarian thoughts I've been learning or accumulated in my life. In the textbook, I asked my lecturer or supervisor in the college these questions, and he said, "It's better to look at the National Statistics Bureau, why they are poor, what is poor, and why they are poorer than the others." And he kindly offered a job, actually, by helping him to collect the data from the very thick National Statistics Annual Report. And I learned an amount of them through that. I think what I learned is that the data is not very constant. The calculation of income changes every year from the book I read while in the college. And I tried to explain this, and my lecturer said it's very normal, don't bother that, you just make some modification in the model and the results will tell you why it's so different. And it doesn't help me to answer my questions, of course. And the benchmark of poverty also has its problems. Sometimes they got the benchmark, sometimes they don't have a benchmark. But generally, I think the textbook doesn't help me to understand the economic phenomenon happening around my life over there, and I have to rely on something else to solve this issue. I remember that time, I think I met Lee on the Chinese Twitter account, and I really appreciate she was constantly telling me, maybe you should refer this book, maybe you should refer this person as an alternative answer, and I did. And I find it's quite useful. For example, what is poverty? I learned it's not a data issue. You can't find data that explain what is poverty in the world, because the world is so different. It's a very subjective manner. It's about how you regard poverty, whether these people are regarded as poverty, or how poor they can be suffering. There's no scientific evidence on that, basically. And also, why they are poorer than the rest of the people, it's not because they are in a different place, but they are suffering from the regulations, unfortunately, which prevented them from seeking additional opportunities or liberties. And of course, the market and the financial resources. And I think that's been very influential to me as a libertarian student. And of course, I'm trying to solve these problems by looking at entrepreneurship and microfinance. Have you ever heard about microfinance?
Yeah.
Great. So I appreciate your knowing this. For those you probably haven't heard about this term, it's kind of a very self-oriented way of credit provision to poor people, small businesses. And the most famous case will be Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. And I thought that might be the answer that I can follow on. However, my colleagues over there doesn't agree with that. They said, maybe you should look at government spending as an approach, because we are economists, are we? So let's do it scientifically. And you probably will approach the banks to find a loan, because they are very formal financial institutions, and we should not rely on the private lenders and loan sharkers. And I was really surprised. I said, government spending is over there, but they are not creating jobs, they are not creating the liberties for people, and how can we rely on the government spending to help those poor people? And the university basically spend a lot of money to build new gyms, new buildings, very sophisticated computers, but are those equipments helping the poor students of us? I don't think so. And I think we had a very fundamental view over there. And unfortunately, I find alternative or additional paths to explain these things and find my way to continue. So I choose microfinance as way of my further studies at the topic. So afterwards, I went to University of Nottingham in the degree of finance and investment, because I would like to know how finance people look at microfinance and how sustainable finance could be. However, I'm very disappointed. This is the pictures I'm going to show you about my postgraduate life. It's University of Nottingham campus. It's very fancy, and on the right corner there are a bunch of crazy rich Asians, if I could call them. It's not my colleagues. It's just a photo from the movie. However, it's not. It's just the way that they spend money over there. They went to parties. They bought luxury stuff. It's not only Asians, but also other nationalities like Arabic or Russians can do the same thing. They are very enjoying the luxurious lifestyle over there, rather than thinking of things like poor people or development issues. And the student dormitory over there, which is a great case, cost the students like £800 per month, which is probably double as the tuition fees of college life tuitions of myself. And I was surprised that it's only 1 month's expenses. However, I think those things just keep me going on to explore why the lifestyle could be so different and how much finance can help the poor people. So at that time, I gave me 3 questions as well. What is finance? What is microfinance? And how finance can help the poor people and the small businesses? And here are the answers I learned from the textbook and learned from the libertarian thoughts. In the textbook, the first lesson I've been told is you have to learn the manipulation, arbitrage, and to understand the risk so that you can understand finance. And I'm a little surprised because I never thought I'm a person of manipulation. I never want to manipulate anything to understand what is finance. However, it seems to be very essential if I'm continuing in these sectors or as a worker in finance. And I think what I learned as microfinance is very surprising as well. They created the measurement called randomized control trials. Have you ever heard about the term? It's like we have 2 bunch of people here, and this bunch of people is poor, unfortunately, sorry, and this bunch of people is not poor. As a scientist, I'm giving you, each of you, a loan you don't need to repay as a test, as an experiment. So those group of people are given a loan, and those group are not given a loan. After 3 years, I'll come back to you, have your life changed? And maybe some of you will say no, and some of you will say yes. And I will ask you, some of them here, how do you think these changes of this happening? And by defining the changes, we'll look at how many trees you grow in your garden as the environmental term, how many children you've given birth to, and like how many wives you have, because it's kind of a women protection measurement. And as an economic researcher, you may regard it the loan is not a loan, it's a grant. So if somebody gives you a loan, if a grant, you wouldn't care how to spend it, you just keep it, and probably you just spend it for alcohols or for entertainment, and you wouldn't thought you're going to repay the loan. However, scientists will regard it the loan, and the consequences is that they finish the experiment and then they tell the audience, unfortunately, we don't find any evidences about this experiment, and microfinance basically doesn't work for solving the poverty and eliminate the poverty. And that's how scientific work in this field. And I was surprised because I don't think it's what microfinance in my mind. I think microfinance, from what I read from Herman Yunus in his book, is a loan that poor people are desperate to get to change their lives, and it's very selective. For 10 people who are applying the loan, it just gives them one person the amount of money, and this person will work hard to death because that's a trust he never thought will be given by the rest of the neighborhood. So that's this very different context. However, I think I learned very different things from the textbook in the finance studies and learned from the stories in the field. And I think libertarian thoughts also help me understand what is finance. For example, the original money is what they're looking at. Maybe the gold exchange of intermediary of change, or the central banks, what the role of them in the transaction or in the banking sectors. I think they are very, very key and very essential for me to understand what is finance as a college student. Of course, the free banking and open banking are the solutions that libertarian can tell the finance scholars that how the banks can be more liberal, can be more open, that could be accessible to the rest of the poor people. However, you can see there's a big contradiction over there from what I would like to learn in these courses and what the textbook is trying to teach me. So I'm very disappointed. Those are the books I'm trying to refer to you if you would like to know more about what I'm talking to. The last one is the Banker to the Poor, which is the bibliography of Mohammed Yunus. Unfortunately, I haven't found this copy in the Mongolian version. I know there's many language versions in the world. I'm not sure. I hope in the future we can read it in your local language. And the right one is The Mystery of Banking, written by Rothbard. I think that tells me how the central bank works, how the bank works, and why the banks failed in providing the small loans to the poor people and the rest of the financial services. If you're interested, you can have a look. After my postgraduate studies, I applied a PhD, but before that, before my mediation, went to Beijing for work. Have anyone of you went to Beijing? Oh, great, I saw many of you raise your hands, so you must be familiar with those pictures. It's a great city, very modern, very advanced, but have a lot of problems. You can see the people over there, it's just what's happening every morning, that you have to wait on average for 70 minutes to get on the tube, which can take you to the place you work. And it's like a war. And I was one of them in the middle. And this is the cars on the road, so you can hardly rely on the private transportation either, because it's just a mess. But from the work experiences, I worked as a project manager at a FinTech company, and I was in charge of international collaboration, regional development, and academic support. And this job gives me a very first-hand lessons on what is FinTech and how FinTech works to solve the problems of the financial world. So this is what I learned in my work. There are another 3 questions. I'm trying to summarize my work. What is FinTech? How to deal with FinTech regulations, and how to grow FinTech businesses. And as a libertarian thinker, I think FinTech is very unregulated spaces at that time in 2010 to 2011. And it kind of the digital way of helping people to get a loan, get a payment, and to transfer money freely without border issues, or get leasing or insurance in a very efficient way. This is my assumption. And I think since there's less regulations, the sector can grow very healthily and very innovatively. However, as a practitioner, what I learned slightly changed my mind and challenged my understanding of libertarian thinker. Many FinTech practitioners over there is not interested in the digital technology. They use very conventional tools to set up the business and operating their businesses. And their very core incentive over there is they can get a license very easily. It's not a long license, but just the permission of doing businesses over there in the financial spaces. And most of them think if they get the license, they can sell the license to the rest of the players in the future and make arbitrage from that. And most of them also think that they can go to IPO if they can successfully run the businesses rather than solve the problems in the financial world. And they are very looking for the regulations, surprisingly. I don't know why, but they kind of thinking this is, I'm the first comer in the market. I hope I'm the only comer in the market. So please, someone regulate the market so I can be the first few players over there. Surprisingly, that I didn't expect that they are looking for regulations. And I hope there's more competitions in the market. However, the practitioners do not respect the competitions. Instead, they are trying to limit the competitions. What they do is they kind of investigate each other and collect evidence and throw this to the regulators, saying, I know this guy, he's a bad guy, just caught them, throw them to jail, so that I can be the only players. And I was really, I was feeling nasty by observing those things happening in the practitioner field. And I was very confused why the libertarian thinker is disappointing when they get into the field and find these problems. with these problems, I bring these problems to my PhD, and I did some research in this field. So if you don't mind, I would like to show you what I find in the research. It's just preliminary findings, and most of the work has not been published yet. But I would like to share this with you so that you can probably offer your insights to me and help me understand either libertarian thoughts or the FinTech spaces. I will take it as a lesson. There are three things I learned from my PhD. The power. Many of us don't like the government because we believe the government brings intervention, and intervention just killed the entrepreneurship in the field, which is true. And I think what behind the government probably is power holders. Those power holders would like to use their powers to intervene anything and to disorder the market order or market discipline. And I'm thinking those conflicts exist between the government and businesses, but also exist between the government themselves. For example, in Kenya, they've got the mobile money. It's kind of the mobile payment systems that they can send a text message to someone else, and the money could be sent with this message. It's very easy and very popular in that state because they don't have an alternative way of sending money or not cheap way. But M-Pesa was suffering from this problem as well. The telecommunication regulators from the telecommunication sector is very welcoming this solution. However, the regulator from the banking sector doesn't like it very well. So they have a long-term battle over that field. Who is going to be the real regulator in the mobile money in Kenya? And that has not been settled until the European Union came in and bring their solutions. And it's just temporal. So that's very good cases for me to understand what is power and how much power can influence on the market behaviors. I have to accelerate because I don't have time. So I will treat the power as yin and yang because we will never eliminate those power seekers in the market, just as we cannot eliminate the peace seekers as libertarians. So I'm not sure if I should look at power issues slightly different. And impedance is a sociology term which describes that market grow not only by entrepreneurialism or individualism, but the incentives that they can be given by or supported by the social networks or social relations among these individuals. I think that matters in the financial studies of myself. And also just like I talked with Aaron this morning that the entrepreneurship is not solely incentivized by the entrepreneurs, but also by the investors or regulators somehow, and that's just a fraud. I didn't expect that. So there are other issues that I'm trying to solve apart from the financial scholars. For example, there are many discriminations against me while I was trying to work and set up my business in the UK. And I think as a libertarian thinker, I'm fighting for the poor people, but sometimes I'm fighting for myself as well. That's the reason I set up my business is WeiPoint in the UK, apart from my research at University of Oxford, to prove that as a foreigner, I can still do good things in this country, and I can still solve the problems very smartly as a private entrepreneur. And I can explain that to you after the dinner. Thank you very much.
Questions, answers? Okay. Here.
It's not a question, it's a congratulation. You are presented very well the topic, and I think that you should continue with these tables comparing both sides. It's a very good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Maria.
So in Colombia and Latin America, we have a very interesting FinTech ecosystem that it hadn't been very regulated. So many people raise questions on, especially venture capitalists. If there's not enough regulations, they won't invest in the companies. So in a certain way, regulation helps the market or the current market to see of people to have more trust in companies and to feel that their money won't be stolen. So I wanted to know your view on these interactions, this dynamic.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm really interested in your question. I'm absolutely looking at this myself. And actually, I think before the conference, I encouraged some friend to come over because she had these same problems as well. She's majoring in entrepreneurship in the college, but she said she's really disappointing after lots of internships in these sectors because she said many entrepreneurs had a very good vision, but in the practice they do some nasty things. And she feels that she's very disappointing on this term and in these sectors. And also I think that reckons about the regulation sectors as well. If I can go back, I'm not sure if I can go back. No, probably not. The regulation was expected by the practitioners, and the venture capitalist investment is absolutely one driver of that. I hope the venture capitalists can invest the startups in their own will, which is a very ideal least case. However, through my research, I realized that many venture capitalists are not private money. They are using public money as a vehicle to invest. And that's actually bring disorders in the market because if there are real investors or risk takers in the market, they would like to invest the good digital startups. They are being challenged so badly by these public investors because they got more money and they got the different players more potential to grow the businesses. And if you're an entrepreneur who's doing business seriously, you probably will balance which part of money you will take. And obviously, if there are public money get into the market, the private investor will be kind of excluded somehow. And I'm worried about that. And after the venture investment, you will see there are private equity coming. And some of them are also the public money, and they will bring into IPO, which is the public transaction market. So it seems to me that the entrepreneurship and the successful entrepreneurs are defined differently in the modern age because they kind of fed up with the public money and end up with the public money, and they became the ecosystem of the public funds over there, just like banks or state money. And unfortunately, the entrepreneurship we are talking to, we are expecting, are kind of shrinking because they are under the competition of this money from the public. This very big challenge over there, and I'm not sure if I can validate this kind of point of view in my research in the future or at the moment. But I would like to work with you to explore that and to learn from the other experts as well. It's an excellent question. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.